Okay, I'd like to welcome everybody to the Wellness Subcommittee. Today is Wednesday, November 13th, and we'll call the meeting to order now at 4:30 p.m. Okay, first thing on our agenda is Rhode Island Healthy School Coalition. Representative is not here. Okay. And then how about South County Prevention Coalition? Not here. Okay. Then I'm going to turn the program over to the School Addiction Counselor presentation.
So do we first, do we want to do quick introductions first, just to kind of make sure
Okay.
we're all on the same page? Okay, just, because we had some new members, right?
Yeah.
So let's just make
Yeah.
sure of that. Rob Mezzanotte, Assistant Superintendent.
Sally Davidson, Equity, Belonging, and Community Engagement Coordinator.
Hi, Debbie Lacasco, School Committee.
Sherry Kennedy, I have a parent, twin daughters at Davisville, and school committee elect.
Caroline Serio, I have one child at kindergarten.
Was Rancho School Nurse Hamilton.
Diana Ferraro, I have a senior at the high school.
Jackie DiLorenzo, Early Childhood Supervisor at Fishing Cove.
Hi, I'm Suzanne Lapley, I'm the student assistance, my name was up there. I'm the student assistance counselor at the high school.
Trish Foley, Child Nutrition Services.
Pam Panero, parent.
Okay, so I think to lend some context to the School Addiction Counselor presentation, it's actually the Student Assistance Counselor, so let's get that correct. Student Assistance Counselor.
We have a broader
Yep.
role, yeah.
So let's make sure we get the title correct. So, my recollection of this is this information stemmed from the end of last meeting when we talked about collecting some data and bringing it to our group today to share and discuss. And also, first of all, we want to thank you, Suzanne, for being here, for being here to lend your expertise and background to our work. So thank you for that. And we would give you a chance to maybe weigh in a little bit or just describe a little bit of like what you do with students and the role that you play and things of that nature, if that's okay.
Sure.
So I thought before we get to that, maybe we want to try to like present some of the data that we collected so that we all can kind of see that in context, and then we can kind of turn it over to Suzanne for a bit. So Sally is here. Sally's put together this slideshow for us, so maybe we can kind of just take them through that a little bit, and then we can proceed from there. Okay.
So one of the questions that arose last meeting was what are current policies in the different buildings. This is all language from the handbook. The WMS language you can read for yourself, and then you can see the sort of continuum of disciplinary action at DMS, Davisville, as well here.
And just again, this lends back to that conversation around the vaping offenses.
Right.
Okay, so this is one of the things we talked about last time
Thank you.
is what we currently do in
Mhm.
response to vaping offenses, and this is the language we have from the two middle schools.
So could you go back to the date, so they each have their own versus being,
They are a bit different,
same.
or, I mean, it honestly, if you read closely in the WMS, it's a bit open to interpretation,
oh,
and
right,
some
and
of
I
the,
see DMS is like specific, I got it. Okay.
Yeah,
I'm sorry, the WMS, it does say similar
Okay.
disciplinary action, it's just written differently. Like 2-day
Yeah, I-
suspension, right, is a commonality.
so just to summarize here, like, so for the WMS language, it says the use, sale, possession, or transfer of drugs and alcohol, or the intent to do so is strictly forbidden. If a student is in possession or under the influence of drugs or alcohol, his or her parents and the North Kingstown Police Department will be notified. Violations of the above will result in parental contact and suspension. Tobacco/vaping nicotine is a minimum of a 2-day suspension, and alcohol, drugs, vaping, THC is a minimum of a 5-day suspension. Students are required to meet with the student assistance counselor as well. Okay, so that's the language we see at WMS. At DMS, we have, kind of in this table here, the infraction chemical health policy, tobacco/vaping. First offense is 2 days of in-school suspension, and mandatory, student assistance 2 sessions. Second offense, 2 days in school suspension, continue the mandatory, student assistance sessions as well as social probation and a parent conference. And then third and additional offenses is 2 days in school suspension, continued mandatory sessions, and school, social probation and parent conference. So that's what we
What's
have.
social probation? Just
So social probation, I'm gonna speak generally, because I'm not sure exactly how it's implemented at Davisville Middle School, but typically social probation at school will involve, like prohibition from attending things like social events, school
Oh, okay.
dances, things of that nature.
Dances, yeah.
Hi,
Hi, I'm Leisha Dent, I'm so sorry.
that's okay, Nisha, you wanna have a seat up here?
Oh, sure,
Alright,
yeah, I didn't wanna be
Absolutely,
more
welcome.
disruptive than I already was.
Yep.
The high school, again, it's pretty similar. They have, somewhat general language.
Yep, so the high school says, it is illegal to possess or use any tobacco and nicotine product in North Kingstown High School or on school grounds at any time pursuant to Rhode Island general law. These restrictions include, but are not limited to, chewing tobacco, nicotine pouches, electronic devices, vaping devices, vape juice, pipes, or any other devices used for nicotine delivery. The NKHS administration will have the final say in determining whether a device or product is appropriate for school grounds.
Now, this is just what's in the handbooks currently.
And I do have the specifics if you wanted to know, like, first, second, for high school.
Sure.
So first offense for, if we're just talking nicotine, tobacco, first offense would be, in-school suspension, parent notification, referral to, SAC, and social probation. However, for a first offense, we do offer kids, a deal, if you will. We offer them to take the American Lung Association curriculum called In-Depth, which is 4 sessions. So they can, instead of having in-school suspension and 3 meetings with me, they can do the American Lung Association nicotine tobacco curriculum, which is approximately 3 to 4 sessions, depending on how much time I have with kids. And most of the students choose that on their first offense wisely, and we want them to, because they get that information. Second offense is ISS, could be OSS, and again, depending, there's a little parent notification, referral to me, social probation, and third offense, the same. So, so it is spelled out a little more, in this matrix, so.
Another question that came up during our last meeting is, at what age does the health curriculum discuss vaping? It does begin in grade 4. I can click into some of these documents. These are all online on the school website if you're curious and want to look a little bit more closely. But we can see here in grade 4 there's a lesson breakdown. We see how smoking harms the body here in that health curriculum. And then again in grade 7, grade 9, and grade 12. Would anybody like for me to click into any of these, or?
So the other years do not have it.
So honestly, the curriculum that the schools are using, the ETR health curriculum, it does mention the negative effects of secondhand smoke and things as early as kindergarten. I just don't know for sure, based on what's online, right, that every health teacher is
So this is
teaching
where it's
a specific
this is
lesson.
where it's explicitly in the curriculum.
Yeah, exactly.
like where it's a topic. But I know
Right.
Pam's saying, cause I feel like 5th and 6th grade are like the
Yeah.
entry, you know, by 7th they might have already learned, you know, and not that it's not good in 9th and 12th, but at that point,
The transition from elementary to junior is.
yeah, like I feel like it's, but it's not that we can't, like I had said at the last meeting, like it's not like we couldn't do a preventative
Right.
outside the health curriculum, sort of like
Correct.
through this,
And that's kind of why we
some
wanted to
other
yeah,
way.
that's kind of why we wanted to look at it too, is to see, like, what would make sense, in terms of what we do.
I'm sorry, can you
Yep.
click on the grade 12 to see like what's in there?
Sorry, I'm
No,
not in
you're
your way,
good.
yeah.
So it's pretty general at the top, and then when we get down here into the overviews of the lessons, we start to see more about the topic. So I think it was further down in the unit.
And who does the unit?
So it's analyzing influence of tobacco.
Right, lesson 11. these lessons would be taught by the health teachers. You could probably click into some of these resources as well, but this is kind of a more broad curriculum document. Lesson 11, analyzing influences on tobacco, alcohol, and other drug use. I'll scroll back up just to make sure we didn't miss it elsewhere. Understanding stress. There are negative consequences of substance abuse, and this is an overview for the whole unit. Yep. And again, this is all on the school website as well, or the district website. Another question that came up last meeting is what data exists for tobacco and vaping offenses at the different schools. We did get some data documents from the high school. We also went through Aspen, which is a reporting system that the district uses for incidents with students. There were 0 so far this year at Wickford Middle School and at Davisville Middle School. Last year there were 0 at Wickford Middle School and just 3 at Davisville Middle School. And we got a little bit more information from Wickford Middle School. Over the last 3 years, there have only been 4 incidents of vaping, and it was 3 individuals. So there was 1 repeat offender. All 3 were referred to the student assistance counselor. I can click into some of these documents because I'm sure you're curious. So this is from the high school.
So the high school gave us 3 years of data. So what they gave us was number of students with infractions. They spaced out to nicotine, vape, and THC. So in the year's 22-23 school year, there were 35 nicotine, vape, and 39 THC. Each of those were referred to the student assistance counselor. Okay. In 23-24, we had number of students with infractions. It was 48 students total. Some have both. But there were 30 nicotine vapes and 20 THCs, with again 100% being referred to the student's assistance counselor. Of the nicotine vapes, there were 6 who chose in-depth as a suspension alternative. And then if you scroll down.
Yep, this is so far this year.
So far this year, in 24-25, we have 14 nicotine vapes, 1 THC, and we have 9 of the 14 students have chosen the
That's
in-depth
awesome.
program. Yep.
So have we been doing anything that you think has reduced it at the high school?
Well, it's only the beginning of the year.
Oh, good.
I was gonna
So,
say, that's
yeah,
a lot
it's
for.
But
Yeah.
even
Yeah.
from
Yeah.
even from like the year before, there was like a
Mhm.
little bit of a drop.
Yep.
I mean, it's consistent with national and Rhode Island data where we're seeing a downward trend. One of the only places I think where we've seen an upward trend is in marijuana, cannabis use in middle schoolers. But usage across the board nationally and in Rhode Island seems to show in the past 2 years a downward trend. So.
Yes, so Suzanne shared this document, which shows Rhode Island data, SurveyWorks data. So you can see this is for middle school, the decreases from 2022 to 2024, with the one exception of, like you say, marijuana, and then in high school.
And, you know, to be fair, when you look into the data in terms of numbers, about 23,000 students took the survey. 12,000 of them were 6th, 7th, or 8th graders. Their usage is lower, so that is going to skew that total use. When you look at the overall, the high schoolers, there were 10,000 in grades 9 through 12, with only 7% of the total of the 23,000 being in 11th and 12th, which are typically higher use, you know, in terms of especially cannabis and alcohol. So, I mean, you know, it's as good as we have, and it's a fairly big number, you know, 23,000 is a good number. But, you know, I would expect the actual number is probably a little higher than what you're seeing.
I think we also had, some data from student assistance counselor at the high school.
I think, yeah, had you shared something that you wanted me to project up
I
here,
mean, that was
Suzanne,
last
beyond?
year's, I was not there last year, this is my
Mhm.
first year at the high school. We
Oh, okay, that's
compiled
one of these.
data, it will
Yes.
look different, it kinda gives you, the number of students that we see, so we track this anonymously for the Department of Behavioral Health. And so, so these are the reasons that students sought out. Most of them were self-referred, oh, you'll see that in the next, as you scroll down, but, so she saw 247 students last year, and for a variety of reasons. And it looked like about 25 were mandatory referrals. So I don't know, you know, sometimes things don't get clicked right, but, you know, it about is perhaps what it was. And then if you scroll down a little, it'll tell you how those, a little demographic, but how those students got referred. And so the bulk of her referrals were self, 126. So that can be anything from the VASA and peer-to-peer kids who we work with, which is a fairly big chunk of that. And then just kids who are coming in because maybe they're, you know, they have other mental health issues, or maybe they have someone in their family or friend group who's struggling with substances. They themselves might not be, but they need help navigating what that, you know, what life is like when you're, you know, living with or dealing with someone who struggles.
Suzanne, do you mind talking a little more about the VASA and the peer-to-peer
Sure.
for people?
Yeah, so I am the advisor of the VASA group at NKS. I was at Cheraho when I was there. So these are athletes who have,
Does that stand for something?
it does, and I'll tell you what it stands for. It used to stand for Varsity Athletes Against Substance Abuse, and last year on the state level, they decided to change the meaning of the acronym so that it was more for something rather than against something. So there was a statewide conference to rebrand, and the kids still liked VASA. So they tried to find like how to make VASA fit, you know. So it's now Vocal Athletes Advocating for Substance Use Alternatives. So I think that's very Gen Z, you know, like we wanna be for something.
Yeah.
Which
Can you
is,
say that again? Vocal?
sure, it's, Vocal Athletes Advocating for Substance Use Alternatives. So these are athletes, typically, I don't take ninth graders because I think they need to prove themselves that A, they're substance free in high school, and B, that they're going to actually play a sport, you know, and have played a sport. So they're members of our athletic teams. And the idea with that is that we know that athletes have incredible social credibility. People look up to athletes, they just do. And so VASA uses that to set an example, and these are kids who've made a commitment to being substance-free during their playing time in high school. And so they pledge not to use substances. If they do use substances, they cannot be on the team. And they have a responsibility as a role model. They help with the younger students, younger athletes, being mentors to them. They go to the 8th graders and they do presentations. And so the idea is to show the 8th graders, these are athletes who've made this commitment, and to show them the things that we do to stay healthy, natural highs. That's what we called them last year when we presented to our 8th graders. These are our natural highs, and this is why. These are our reasons why. And then we usually play a game with them, get them involved. It's a game that has some kind of a meaning, and so they work with the kids we'll be going to all 3 middle schools, cause we hope to go to Jamestown as well, since some of those kids come here. And my hope is to, have it be a dual, activity with the Narragansett kids. So I've reached out to the Narragansett SAC to see if we could do it together, to show the kids too that athletes from different schools aren't necessarily always rivals, they can work together for something good like this. And so that's what VASA is. And then we just have other little campaigns, like we did a safe driving campaign last year at the school I was at, where we made keychains for our seniors that said, drive sober on one side, arrive alive. We gave those out to all the seniors before proms and graduation, had them sign something and interact with us and talk about why they wanted to stay sober during those celebrations. So again, just engaging kids and being an advocate for staying substance free. Peer-to-peer is, so VASA, you have to go through a process to become a member of the VASA team. I have 31 kids on my team. They're amazing. I'm so excited to work with them. We'll have our first meeting on Monday. The peer-to-peer is open to anybody interested in improving the mental health culture of the school. It is funded by the Collins Foundation here, and we work with I wouldn't call it a curriculum, but under the guidance of the University of Michigan, and they have a peer leadership program. And so basically we are creating campaigns as a team of people interested in improving mental health in our school. And those campaigns are bringing awareness to destigmatizing mental health. In other words, like mental health, normal part of life to struggle, but it can be fixed. It can be solved. Like, it's just because you struggle does not mean that you cannot get better. So how do you get better? You reach out for help. You see a trusted adult. You do things that improve the health of your life. So healthy activities, positive friends, and so we bring these campaigns to bring awareness to these ideas to kids. And that could be through posters, it could be through interactions, hands-on activities in the cafeteria, it could be a film. So our team, we have lots of ideas, and we went to a conference at the University of Rhode Island, where the people from the Collins Foundation and University of Michigan are there training our kids how to be leaders, how to run campaigns. And so we have a pretty robust team for peer-to-peer too. We have about 30 kids. And Sherry Monaco and Matt Hughes are the main advisors for that, and I'm the volunteer advisor.
Thank
So, yeah. And of course there's intersectionality, right, between mental health and substance use. So, both those teams support the same goal.
Yeah, and just as a little context of the peer-to-peer program, I'm very familiar with it because I got to know the Collins family a little bit. They suffered a great loss of their son,
Yeah.
and they were some of the most vocal advocates for mental health awareness and mental health, just bringing that to the fore of conversation in schools. So it's a wonderful program, and it's a very it's a meaningful program, and kids really take to it. So that's great.
Yeah.
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 And just one question, you said there's like about 30 in each of them, are they all from the high school, or is it middle school too?
These are, so I was specifically talking about the high school. VASA is not in middle schools. Typically it's been varsity athletes, but peer-to-peer is in some middle schools. Although I'm not sure, I don't think we have peer-to-peer teams yet at Davisville or Wickford.
Not that I'm aware of, no.
Not that I'm aware of. But there are some middle schools that do have teams. So.
And the peer-to-peer is like a Rhode Island, like a statewide.
It's actually
Or
national.
nationwide.
It's nationwide. I think there might be about, I'm guessing, 8 states, 14 states, something like that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Something like that. Yeah.
Yeah.
That the Collins family is doing Rhode Island. Beth is
Right.
a friend of mine.
Okay.
Yeah, so the Collins family in particular in Rhode
Helped
Island
bring
Yeah.
it.
has brought it to Rhode Island and really has been, the main encourager and cheerleader for this. Incredible family, yeah.
Mm-hmm. All right, Suzanne, thank you so much for
Sure.
sharing that. anyone wanna open up for discussion or questions with regard to anything, any of the data, any of the, conversation? Is there anything that is, maybe coming to mind as far as like, strengths, needs, questions? Yeah.
I just had a question. We went over at the high school, the nicotine infractions, but did you go over what they were for other substance use?
At the high school, if you wanna go back to
Sure.
that,
So it did have THC and nicotine separated in this
Yeah.
document.
so I think we said 22, 23, we had 35 nicotine.
Oh, that's not
And
what I
then
meant.
39.
I meant at the
The middle
beginning,
s-
when you talked about like the repercussions for being,
The
Oh,
handbook information.
Like
Pardon?
per
The handbook
Davis Mill
information?
Road,
Right,
get this,
right,
and
the
this,
consequences,
and
okay.
So
I
it
have-
does say
Yeah.
drugs slash alcohol slash
This
tobacco.
is middle
stuff.
school though,
Yeah.
I think you were asking about high school?
So I can tell you
So it
from
just
our
says
matrix.
tobacco.
Sure.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, great.
So for alcohol, first offense is 3 to 5 days out of school suspension. Parent notification and then referral to me. Second offense, 5 to 10 days, OSS meaning out of school suspension, same parent notification, referral to me. Third offense, 5 to 10 day OSS, parent notification, SAC referral, and then school committee referral. So on the third alcohol offense. Then chemical health includes nicotine and tobacco, and then, let's see, other drugs.
And so what happens, like, there's this, so they're like punished, they can't come to school, their parents are notified, and then what's the, like, the treatment part of it? Is
So
that-
we don't do treatment in schools. So my main goal when I get a referral is to assess really the level of use. Try to find out, is this an addiction? What kind of additional support might the student need? Sometimes this is something the family is already handling, maybe the student has a therapist, but sometimes there might be a greater level of care needed. So that's my first job, is to kind of figure out where is this falling and what kind of additional support might be needed.
So you do like a full assessment?
Not like a clinical assessment, but just I would say, yes, assessing for what kind of need is necessary, what is the need here? Is this something that we can handle at school, or do we need to refer out? And then usually I see a kid for 3 sessions, so we're looking at the level of whether it's use, addiction, and then we're looking at where they are in that continuum of wanting to change. What is the substance, how is it serving them? Because at the core of all substance use, there's usually something else going on. So what needs are being met by this substance use? And then in that final session, then looking at protective factors and how do we then do the things that could meet the needs in a way that's not so destructive to their lives and their goals in life. Sometimes it's more than 3. There are kids who I know in my last school I saw all year, because they were trying to quit.
And so are you at the school like all day?
I am. I'm
And are
full-time.
you a social worker or?
I'm an LMHC. So, yeah, and then I have my CSAC certification too, which is a certified school counselor, so, yeah.
And it's on the second and third offense, it's also 3 sessions, or does that go up too?
Then it's just kind of as needed, because once you get into that area, kids are struggling, and so, then we're kind of seeing, who else do we need to get involved, and what kind of care do they need, yeah.
And I think by the third offense, by the time it gets to a referral to the school committee, now we're on a pretty high risk issue here. The school committee isn't going to throw the kid out of school, but we may mandate that they have to have either outpatient or inpatient, and documentation from those, sources. Definitely, the parents are definitely involved. They've been involved from the beginning, but now they're even more so involved. Rob and Dr. Duva would be probably meeting with them to go over, you know, your kids had like 22 violations and it's October, you know, so we really need to get more help. And at that point, we would also work as a resource to getting them into a program, or, you know, the school board isn't really, if it gets to the point where the school board's getting involved,
Right.
it's a big
Yeah.
concern.
Yeah, and there is a, if you've ever heard of 7 challenges
Yes.
treatment, yeah, so we do, brief challenges, which is 4 sessions. And if it gets, you know, if I do have a kid who's struggling and the family and the kid are open to doing brief challenges, I can do that with them in school, and that has been really successful.
Mhm.
And I don't know if that was done here before, but that is an option too, so, yeah.
Suzanne, no, go ahead.
I have a question. So the in-school suspension for the vaping and that, cause that's the policy. The in-school suspension or the in-depth, who decides, who makes that decision? Is it the student or the parent?
That's a good question, that has come up this year. It's offered as a question to the student, by the deans. And if the student says that they, you know, then the parent, the dean calls the parent and says, this is what your child decided. In the handful of kids that, decided they wanted to take the in-school suspension, I don't know why you would do that, you know, for the life of me, I can't figure it out, but, you know, I had one kid tell me, you know, I just figured I'd get it over with. It's like, okay, you still have to see me, like, I had another kid say, I'm just gonna go sit and do work. Okay, you know, so for whatever reasons, I did have a parent say, I don't think this is the right thing. I think he should take the in-depth. And the kid was like, no, I wanna take the in-school suspension. I think it became a powers, you know. And so ultimately, mom backed down and said, okay, if this is
But
what
if
he
mom
wants.
didn't back down, whose decision would it be?
You know, that's a good question. I'm guessing the parents, you know, that was my gut, is it's ultimately the parents' decision.
And if the parent wanted to look at the in-depth program before they said yes to it,
Absolutely.
would that be offered?
Oh, absolutely, yeah.
You can actually go on the American Heart Association's website and you
Yeah,
can
no,
click on it and it's the same program.
I know, but I mean, I just think
Yeah,
making those things clear to parents is important.
right. And I
That
think,
they have choices.
and
you
I
know?
think some parents may not even
And they may
maybe be
benefit from
computer
that.
savvy enough to
Right.
be able to get onto a computer program and do it, but you're right, they need to be told, these are the choices. This is what your son or daughter is leaning towards, but, you know,
Yeah, and if they
You guys
chose
kinda figure
in-school
it out and-
suspension, say, hey, maybe you wanna look at this because this might be a better option. I mean,
Right.
it could
And I
work.
do have paper
Always.
copies
Yeah.
of the curriculum, which I
Mhm.
could share with the deans and say, hey, if you ever have a parent who wants to see the curriculum, here, that's a good idea.
But I think what too, like saying, we probably should have it stated in the policy, like what, instead of you having to be like, oh, you know, and like, if it's in the policy, then there's no question
Is-
about what it is.
That was gonna be my question, like, what does the language actually say in the handbook on this? Is there language that says that, or is it just kind of
So,
practice?
no,
This
but
was
it's-
all I could find.
And
in
I
the
don't know that
handbook.
it's in there yet.
Yeah, so the
Because
matrix is
last year
separate.
was the
It would
first
be
year.
So that might be a way to, clarify some of this confusion,
Yes.
is to really make sure that when we do handbook revisions this
Yeah.
year, that we spell that out,
Yeah,
you
I
know?
agree,
Yeah.
yeah.
I
Yeah,
think
it's
I-
the guardians, I mean, ultimately falls
Yep.
on the guardian
Yeah, and
to
from
make
my
that decision.
standpoint, we're one school system. And I could see where the high school would maybe have a different policy to address this, because issues get different with the students at that age. But for the little guys, I really think we have to have a consistent policy that it doesn't matter if you're in Davisville or if you're in Wickford,
Absolutely.
if this is what's gonna happen. And I personally like the bottom where it's very clear
Me
cut.
too, cause I feel like that's easier.
This is what's gonna happen. The above one for Wickford leaves too much interpretation.
Mm-hmm.
But
The
in-
bottom one is very clear cut.
Yeah. In the new policy, however,
Mhm.
that, like, do you know about the new policy, like the ride model policy?
You mean the, tobacco-free
Yeah.
schools?
Yeah.
Right, I mean,
So can I have some can you answer questions about it? Or-
I mean, I can tell you what I know.
Okay, so what is a motivational interview?
Where's
What page are
It is
you
on
on?
page 4.
It's just the type of therapy that.
That's a style of interview.
One thing I would just like to add too is that I do appreciate that we're revisiting these policies because I think that the state recommendation is much more like it favors restorative practices, and I do think our policies are currently rather punitive, and so
Well, yeah, even
that's
like
one
the
like
missing
general
school.
notice thing that I think is we might be moving in the right direction in that respect. But I'm sorry, Pam, I didn't mean to.
No, no,
Yeah,
Yeah,
it's-
I don't see what you mean, but if you're
Change
talking about
subject.
motivational interviewing,
Well, it says,
say?
in the case that the school does not currently blah, 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 will meet with the school, blah, 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 professional for a screening, assessment, and motivational interview.
right, so motivational interviewing is a modality of working with clients. And so, and it's very, I mean, it is listening to kids and basically reflecting back what you hear. So, I mean,
Asking them
in
open-ended
essence, right,
questions, to
very
try and feel where
open-ended.
they're at,
yeah.
what they're open to, and that brings up the whole thing, like, once they're 16, it's not really the parent's decision, is it? Like, legally? Like, to have to go into, like, an in-depth or something?
No, it is.
I would think there'd have to be 18
Yeah.
to supersede their parents' wishes. That's true with
Yeah,
IEPs, for instance.
I mean, I guess
Yeah.
it depends on if you define in-depth as a treatment, medical treatment,
It's
right?
not.
So
It
it's
is
not a medical treatment,
Yeah.
I mean,
It's
that's,
substance use.
Right, but it is a American Lung Association
Okay.
curriculum about nicotine and tobacco products
Okay,
and their impact on physical and mental health.
so it's informative.
It's informative, yeah.
not-
Yeah, in my practice, it's always, when it comes to school matters, at 18, students are an adult, and there's different, like, there's different requirements for 18-year-olds, they can do more on their own, but anything before that's always parent involvement.
another question is, what is a prevention retreat created by prevention specialists for educational program option number 3?
So we kinda covered this
Yeah.
last week.
We were thinking we didn't wanna have that in there.
This is comes from the state model policy. I'll say it again, I said it last week, under no circumstances am I ever going to, or we're ever going to, like, advocate or support anything like that. I've never heard of it, I've never heard of it ever happening in practice, I don't know where it came from. I don't support it, I would never support it.
If, what it is sounding like to me, Dan Fitzgerald, who actually does work for the, American Lung Association, and he was the founder of the Charahoe Youth Task Force, they had a Saturday retreat. It was mandatory if you were caught, this was a few years back, if you were caught violating the nicotine policy, kids went on Saturday, and so it was part of the coalition, and they had they used Third Millennium, which was an online, curriculum, so.
But it wasn't sleeping over.
No,
That was
no,
like-
retreat, I think you're,
First
yeah,
thought was
so
like
it
a
was like,
retreat.
you know, you come in the morning, you have, group work where you are working on this curriculum about nicotine, and then, and he was a prevention specialist, and then at the end of the day, you know, or however many hours, 6 hours, you know, you've done your time, that was considered, you know, part of the discipline package, if you will. What they found though was a lot of kids and parents wouldn't make the time to do that, even though it was mandated by the school. And so at first they had high attendance, but then little by little, you know, people couldn't get there. And then what do? You know, so they would schedule them for another Saturday, and then it just would kind of, so then what they did instead was they took that Third Millennium and they put it in the dean's office. And so then the deans had to kind of oversee the kids doing that curriculum. So it was no longer a Saturday retreat, if you will. I think that's what is meant,
Thank you.
yeah.
When I was at the college and was running the smoking, we would have a Saturday, like one semester, where we talked about, different ways to quit smoking, but we also talked about misperception, because everybody smokes. No, they don't. Yeah, they do. I swear to God, everybody smokes. Maybe who you hang around with do. So then we'd give them an hour and they would have to walk campus and mark down the number of people they saw versus the number who had cigarettes. And they were like, wow, like I saw 200 people and only 10 of them had cigarettes, see? So 190 people right there don't smoke. But they're at this age, they're very into following their peers, and a lot of it is misperception, like everybody drinks when they get into college. No, they don't. You know, yes, they do, they all do, you know, so that was what we called our retreat, where we'd provide some motivational or things like, you know, the craving for a cigarette lasts less than a minute. So if you have a craving for a cigarette, go dance in the hallway, go out with your friends for a quick walk, because now we're looking at different holistic ways to treat this. You know, they all wanna get on Wellbutrin and they all wanna get on the medication to stop smoking, but you don't need that. Go for a walk, go outside. So we did that as a retreat. So there's different ways that there's motivational retreats are done. But it was really just to let them know that a lot of what you're thinking isn't real. So, okay, any more questions?
I had one. So are we gonna use this as the model to like make our new one? Is that sort of
This,
yeah, like the Rhode Island one?
so the purpose in looking at this is to look at it and
Okay.
basically have discussion around, you know, is there anything we can learn from
Pull
it?
format and put into it?
Yeah,
Okay.
so this is not our policy, clearly.
No, I didn't know if
Yeah.
we were gonna, like, you know, where we were gonna start to do the policy. Like,
Yeah.
are we
If
gonna
it's a
take this and,
template,
like,
yeah.
take things out, put things in,
So-
or?
Yeah, so I think that, I think before we get to that, I think what we wanted to do today was discuss some of the data that we had talked about, to have conversations, you know, with the student assistance counselor, and then from there, look at, well, what do we see as being maybe some strengths, what are some things that we see as maybe being a need? So maybe we kind of open that up to discussion, based on what we've heard today.
I think the whole focus of the state putting this out is to get away from punitive and go into an education model. All of the research shows that punitive really doesn't work, and you guys know as well as me, if you say no, they're doing it. So we have to educate them as to why they should be saying no. So I think this guide was simply a guide to show how you could get away, because the easiest thing to do is suspend them. But does that change their behavior, or does that dig their heels in? You know, and say, I fight authority, authority always wins type of thing. So, no, this is not going to be our policy, but it should be a guide as to, maybe we don't wanna do 2 days of in-school suspension. You know, maybe they like having in-school suspension where they can't do certain things. You know, maybe we need to change that more to an educational program. Maybe they need to see how many people in the grammar school are smoking, or in the high school, or in their families. You know, things along those lines.
Mhm.
And like notifying the police, I don't know, or at Wickford Middle School.
Well,
I
that's
think
if they
that's if
have,
it's,
especially cannabis.
yeah, I think
Yeah.
that's more if it's THC.
Oh, okay.
Because yeah, I was gonna say,
Yeah, I don't think we're notifying the police every time a kid is smoking, or we
hope
suspect
not.
they're smoking tobacco.
you know what I noticed in our current one? It says that students who participate in athletics and our extracurricular activities will be required to attend a mandatory meeting with their parents once each year before their first athletic season.
Mhm.
Did we do, I'm only asking because my daughter was on the soccer team in Davisville, and we did not attend a meeting.
So I know that there's different policy language for substance use that pertains to athletes, at the
Okay.
varsity level, at the high
Is it
school
'cause-
level.
and I know this year they had us
Yeah.
like to, we had to sign some, like
Yeah.
we did, the kids didn't, but
Okay.
it had to get, actually that's not true, they had to sign it and get it notarized.
So,
that
that's something
part of
totally
that?
different, yeah, that's different.
Okay,
So this pertains to the high school, is the varsity athlete, policy language around substance use. And this goes back a long time. This was a movement in Rhode Island that happened many years ago.
So like this one isn't our current the ones from last.
I don't know the one you're holding up there.
This is our current.
Yeah, so this is our current policy,
The
it actually,
JICH or the JIC.
yeah, it actually says,
What are we following the policy?
that's what I was saying, cause it's
What are you
actually,
on, JICH or JICG?
But is it referring only to high school varsity athletics, or is it
no, it
like
actually
to
said,
sport?
I just read it, hold on, students.
All students participating in athletics or extracurricular
This is the latest one.
will be required to sign a contract stating they understand the
Right.
policy as
Yeah.
mandated by the North Kingstown School Committee. That,
But why is it
Uh,
just
And
the
it
assumption
says
of
this
risk
policy
form?
contract pertains to high school and both middle schools.
Where are we here? I'm sorry, which
Sorry,
page?
JICH, page two.
JICH,
Under prevention,
what is prevention?
the last paragraph. Well, in the second paragraph.
What does the assumption of risk form include? Does any of that include substance?
Well, it just says students who participate, it's
So this
basically.
has to do, okay, so are you looking under part one, expectations pertaining to all students while at school / school sponsored
No,
events?
no, no, it's, A, prevention, it's like the,
So the prevention being right underneath that?
well, it says
It's
like
on
A,
page two.
prevention, the school department will provide students and parents with information.
You mean one prevention?
No,
What
that's
No, I
page?
think I have a different one.
Yeah.
So this was from last time, that's why,
Yeah, this is our current policy.
I assume this is our current policy. Cause it also has in here all about the
Yeah,
consequences that are,
That
you know,
one looks
yeah.
like not
I
education.
don't know if we're looking at the same one.
It's a chemical health and student safety policy manual, JICH.
Yep, that's what I have here.
Yeah.
Okay, so on the,
Page two.
so it was like page 2 after policy statements for all students, it says A, prevention.
We're looking at different things.
Yeah.
Oh, so
It's
this isn't
slightly
the one
different.
from last time, then is this not the correct one? So this one says
What's the date
What's the
at the
date on
end?
it? Yeah,
10/9/12.
yeah, so this is an updated one from there.
Oh, alright, so
this one was emailed, I think.
Yes.
this one,
I think
yes,
so.
this
Yeah.
is the email print.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay, alright,
Yeah, the latest update was approved on January 25th of 2024.
oh, okay. Do you think, could we make copies of
Yeah.
those?
Yep.
'Cause I don't think that was the one that was emailed.
It wasn't.
Do we need, does everyone want one, so?
Yeah.
Sure.
Yeah.
Well, I'm just thinking that's probably where we should start from, right, is the current policy and then
Yeah.
adding to, okay.
This is the one that
I'll take one too, please.
I'll make for everyone.
Yes.
I don't know, I printed this one out from the
Yeah, I
last time of the
printed mine
meeting,
out from the email too.
so unless it was a different email.
No, that's what I got that from the original.
From the original
Yeah,
email.
the original.
Yeah, the original one,
Mhm.
125-24. I'm just pulling it up on my phone.
Mhm.
it's fine, well, that's good, cause I was
That a
like,
good catch.
well, no, but I was like, no, but then they did change this year to like have you like have the kids like have
Oh,
to
the
get it
assumption of
notarized.
risk, is that
Yes,
what you're?
yeah, like the one that's much
Mhm.
more,
Every year, the assumption of risk form, that one.
we only have to do it once.
Oh, yeah, that's just
And
one
then
time.
you do it again in 9th grade.
Yes, yes.
No, I think
No,
so.
it's once,
every year.
it's just once throughout their career in.
No, I think they have to when they go to the high school, it has to do it again.
I think you have to do it every year.
I think they just changed
They
the
just changed
form.
it, cause
So you
now
have to
the
do
middle
it again.
school is part of,
They
Oh.
changed the
inter-
form
basket,
from
and
last year
then
to
it-
this year.
That's why
would've
we had to
only
do
had
it again.
do one.
Oh, I see.
yeah, and then I think it did say the kids when they go to high school have to do it
Mhm.
again, but not till then.
Okay, got it.
So I had one thing that I was thinking of, like, we were talking about education, what about having kids do community service? Like around something that would, I don't know, maybe. Yeah, I don't know what you were saying about.
So community, I mean, would it be like a mandatory community service?
Well, I'm just saying, like, I don't, like, I like the education too, I don't like you're getting suspended from school, but I was like, what about if they, you know, like, kind of like a community, I don't know, I just thought of it, it wasn't like any, like, I was for it or against it, but I was like, oh, what if they had to do some community service stuff?
We have
To-
that in our policy at the college, on your second offense or further, you were assigned to go to facilities, to work with facilities, and you'd had to go around and you had to empty all the ashtrays and all the trash bins, you had to clean the ashtrays, and
I see.
that
I-
whole goes
Ashtrays.
to it.
Well, it's sometimes like the kind of mandated community service is a little more complicated, cause you need somebody to supervise it.
Right, to
And,
say
um,
they did
It's
it.
complicated.
Yeah.
And minors aren't allowed to
Minors,
do, certain community service without, an adult, so,
Mhm.
I mean, as a repeated thing for.
It just
It's
popped
a
into
really
my
nice
head.
idea. No, it's a
Yeah.
nice
But
idea, but
there's,
it is
I get what you're saying,
complicated
there's all these
with
rules
younger
around
Yeah.
it,
kids,
but
yeah.
like,
It does happen, we had part of, at Charahoe, that was our policy, 10 hours of community service, with all violations. For some kids, it was it was a turning point for them, having to volunteer somewhere. For some kids, it was a way of getting into the food bank, for their family, and so they were able to work the food bank and then take groceries home, so it became important for their family. But then there was a group of kids who it was really hard for them to find a place because they didn't have money for transportation. And, maybe there wasn't somebody who could drive them, or if they could drive, they just didn't have the funds to drive that far, because you're kinda out in the sticks there, to get to Westerly or wherever. We have these options for kids who were younger than 16. So there's, a few places, the food bank, Johnny Cakes, there are a few places where kids can volunteer. But that was one of the challenges, was finding a place and making sure that everybody, so that it was equitable. When a kid just had no way of getting anywhere, they would find ways to have them volunteer with the athletic department, and they would find things for them to do, to be, helpful and be on the team kind of thing.
do you feel like it worked, like as a way to make them,
I mean,
or,
for the kids who it worked for, I had some personal stories where kids told me, this was one of the best things I ever did. There was a gal who worked at the Johnny Cake in Westerly, and she said she was amazed at how much what they sold impacted people and impacted their lives, and she saw that. And it just learning how a small amount of donation can really impact a family, and it just she continued to work there. Two people that I know who worked at the food bank continued to work there. So you hear stories like that, and you think, yeah, if that is even, a certain percentage of the kids, it's well worth it.
Did it change their behavior that led them there?
In the kids that I'm talking about, the 3 that I'm thinking, right now, 2 of them. Yeah,
But they also have the education aspect,
they did.
not just the.
They did, yeah. So,
Could you make them, maybe the second time, instead of doing more passive education, have them have to participate in active education of their peers? So instead of sitting there absorbing a video that they may or may not be paying attention to, the second time around, say, all right, you've seen this before, now take what you were supposed to learn the last time, go present it to a peer group, and prove that you have taken something out of it.
Yeah,
Mandatory
in-depth is
science here.
Regurgitate
Yeah.
something.
Yeah. The thing about in-depth that's really cool is it's not passive.
Okay.
It's extremely active. And so it's designed to be, it can be served to a group or individually, but there's no sitting back. Yeah, you are engaged the entire time. And I'm happy to show you that. I can send you, or we show you the questions that are asked, and, but yeah, it is definitely not, yeah. It gets a little tricky if you talk about kids going in and, I go into the 9th grade health classes and do a couple days of alcohol, tobacco, and other drugs. I'm gonna have my VASA kids pop in and share with those kids why they choose to be sober and what their natural highs are with the 9th graders. But, they don't have a lot of extra time at the high school too, they have a packed curriculum, so. I think the idea is great, cause if you can teach it to someone else, but, yeah. But maybe we could find other ways to channel that, Like they could teach it, but not necessarily be in a teaching role in the high school.
Like make a poster.
Yeah, exactly,
Turn.
yeah.
Hang on.
Yeah,
be
yeah,
resource provided to them.
absolutely, I like that.
And then this would be the policy that they should be using in the handbook, right? Cause I think it's just funny that each of the middle schools
What's in the
has a
handbook should be
diff-
based on the policy, yes.
Okay.
So did you look at this, new one? Did you get it yet?
Yeah, I got it.
Cause on the second to last page, it still talks about a mandatory meeting. Under communication.
Oh yeah, students will be particular educate and or athletes will be required to be on each year before the first. Yeah, so it is in here, do we just,
Where is it?
So
um,
this is,
second to last page.
Oh,
And would that be something, so like, yeah, my daughter just played on the Davisville soccer team, we did not do this.
I think it's only for students who have an incident.
But no, it says
Already.
students who participate in extracurricular and athletes are required to attend, which it makes sense, I mean, it's kinda like goes into VASA, right, like,
I think it's students who have violated the
Yeah,
policy.
apply to violations by like if you look at the, read that.
oh, this part.
Yeah.
Procedures.
But then it says all students participate, so it's
Yeah,
kind
but
of a
it's-
little.
it's-
The procedures listed below apply to violations by extracurricular participants.
So they're subject to that.
But it's weird that it says it's a mandatory meeting with their parents once each, you know what I mean?
Yeah, I mean,
Like,
it just
is there
needs to
where-
read like above
Yeah, like I could-
students who, or students who
Well, it's probably something we
violated.
probably should change, cause it kinda,
Just the verbiage is,
yeah,
but
it's
yeah.
like,
Mhm.
cause it keeps saying all students, but then I get what you're saying up here, it
Mhm,
says.
mhm. Yeah, all subjected students or all
Yeah.
students,
The
something,
plus
yeah.
below apply to violations by extra distance in situations that happen outside of the school.
Mhm.
Yeah, I know what you're saying, yeah, it just
Mhm.
doesn't.
Yeah. So I guess once a violation has occurred, then they fall under this, process of once a year, each year, okay.
But then if you look at below it, for first violation, an athlete will be suspended for the next two scheduled sanctioned events.
But then the next sentence,
I mean, it's very.
it seems like it's up for interpretation.
I know.
Yeah, that's what I mean, cause it is funny how it,
And it's really punitive.
Well,
I
one's
think.
an athlete and one's a club,
yeah,
so, I think there's different standards
But
between
it
the
says
two.
extracurricular participants / students athletes. Oh, off.
Yeah, but the
school
first
grounds
sentence pertains to the
outside.
So what
athlete,
a-
the second
of
student to the
schools.
club.
so one of the things they talked about was that I believe all of what's being referred to here is for not just athletes, but also recognize that students participate in things beyond athletics that are above and beyond school, like the typical school day, like school play, things of that nature. You know what I mean? So I think they were trying to.
Why is it different than just a regular student?
So the idea for this goes back a ways. In Rhode Island, there was a significant movement probably 10, 15 years ago, where they went around to the schools and they talked about the sort of the natural leadership of student athletes and how student athletes typically through, data they had examined are typically sometimes more likely to use substances and set an example in not a good way for other kids. And so there was a real strong effort being made to try to reach athletes and speak to them about the choices they're making, the influence they can have on others. And so with that came sort of an increased expectation for athletes because playing a school sport's it's a privilege. It's not part of the core school curriculum. It's a privilege to wear a uniform for your school. And so they attached a higher level of expectation, if you will, for the athletes versus just a school offense that would impact the school day. This was done I know it was done a while ago, and it's done in every high school in Rhode Island I can remember. There was some kind of effort made in this
And
way.
that somewhat mimics the NCAA regulations for colleges and college athletes. They're held to those regulations as well as the college regulations And the NCAA regulations are very, very, very strict. And these kids live, breathe, and die. Baseball, football, whatever team they're on, they're all gonna be the next Derek Jeter or the, I'm sorry, I'm from New York, so. Gotta say a Yankee, but they all, that's what they assume they're all going to be. And they are the popular kids on campus. So they do have more peer pressure and peer presence than a regular student would. So telling them you can't play in the next football game, you might as well cut my arm off. You know, they'll beg you, please let me do anything, you know, they don't, it's their way of life, it's what they live, breathe. So that goes with why Rhode Island would be doing this too, it's not like out of the blue that they're picking on athletes.
And but does the Rhode Island, like, interscholastically kind of have its own, like, I just wonder if they have their own, like, the NCAA, where do you not have to point out the athletes in the town's policy, because technically all the kids who play sports are under the Rhode Island interscholastic.
The interscholastic league has no role in terms of any discipline of students or any like
Well, I
consequences.
mean, but I mean, like, expecting them not to.
Yeah, same thing, they can set expectations, but when it comes to setting like guidance and like consequences for student behavior, they don't have a role in that, it's all schools.
Yeah, well, that's why I guess I agree, like, I feel like you're kind of, it should be all student, like, whatever the punishment is, should be no matter what you are, you're just a student, you know, at the school.
This is a national thing though. I mean, I moved
Yeah.
here from Texas and it's very I mean, it's the same. The athletes are, like she was saying, the NCAA,
Oh, yeah.
it kind of follows that same guideline.
I think if we do go in a more restorative direction with our
Yeah, it won't
policy,
really-
then that does hopefully
Yeah.
kind of solve the problem of using punitive measures
Right.
unfairly against student athletes, yeah. Maybe.
So I got the impression that the new policy was what we were kind of going with and then making edits to this. Are we saying we're going with our old policy and implementing this new policy into it?
By the new policy, do you mean the North
Yes.
Kingstown policy?
Yeah, well, no, I mean the Rhode Island, the model policy. Are we going with, we're making edits to the model policy, or are we going with the North Kingstown policy and incorporating the model policy into the North Kingstown?
My understanding, and again, I'm free to use this, my understanding is that we were looking at our North Kingstown policy.
Okay,
And
and
we're
then
looking to
adding
see if
stuff,
there's anything
either
we can
minusing or
learn
adding.
from the model policy at the right level and say, is there anything that we feel could be
That could
incorporated
be,
into our policy?
I never got that impression last year, that that's what we were doing, but I
Okay.
like that better.
I like it
Yeah.
better too,
Yeah.
Because we have stuff about self-referral and we have stuff about prevention that is not in the Rhode Island model policy, which you would think would be in the model policy to have prevention and stuff, so, but that's not the impression I have.
So maybe should that be like next steps, like everyone go through and like highlight, add, subtract from like this policy, the North Kingstown?
The North Kingstown one,
Yeah.
I think so.
And are we going with the two policies, or are we trying to make one policy out of these two policies? The chemical health and student safety, and then the tobacco product use on school property. Are we keeping those separate?
The tobacco product use
Is that the
on,
old one too? I don't know.
Well, the tobacco product, yeah, it said it was updated 9/5/23, maybe it was already. I wonder. No, cause this one said, yeah, it's not, it's like two different policies.
It is two, yeah. So
Yep.
is it that the goal to go to one policy, or are we keeping two policies? Like,
so my understanding is that they're two separate policies, right? One deals with
Yeah.
tobacco, one deals with chemical health, so in that respect, I think they should remain as two separate policies. But I think that the original intent of this was to look at the tobacco policy and then kind of like, reference the state policy as being potential guide for updating the tobacco policy.
So, can I ask you, the tobacco product use on school property, is it only only 2 pages, the one you have?
Yes.
So, but basically this one doesn't have any.
It doesn't have anything. Is this
Oh, no, it
one
does, but it's first
9/25/23?
offense.
Is that the
9/5/23.
9/5/23?
Okay, that's the, okay, so, alright, now I know, I'm gonna put this one.
That's confusing.
Yeah.
That's all
I don't need this.
Then I'm like, I need my highlighter.
Wouldn't it be easier though to put it all in the same policy?
I know, like, why,
Make it into drug.
like, should, cause I feel like it's all together in that policy, it says,
Yeah.
basically the first offense, second offense, and third offense, or whether you're,
Right, yeah.
you know, tobacco, you know, chemical or tobacco or vaping.
We could,
Might be easy.
And I feel like this one's pretty simple, and we probably could,
But I think maybe putting it in the same policy is kind of like affirming that that's where it belongs. It is a substance, it is a chemical that's
right,
bad
'cause
for
do you think
kids'
that,
brains.
yeah, cause kids will be like, oh, it's just this tobacco, it's
Yeah,
not that,
tobacco's
you know what I
not
mean,
that.
like, they might not.
Yep. So you're saying
Like-
maybe we just like add, cause this is the tobacco is a shorter policy.
Right,
Well-
but like, maybe just
And
take,
tobacco's in this other one too.
I think the
It's
only
on-
issue here is that this one includes visitors.
right,
So-
but you could actually put that,
But you could have a,
You could
a-
kind of
yeah,
maybe put it as a-
section.
Yeah.
I wonder if we could just put it as like a sub.
This could be almost like a section of this,
Yeah,
an
like
additional section, okay.
yeah, I feel like that,
Right, when I questioned why we had 2 policies, one was more for the students, because there we could educate and do
oh,
whatever.
right here, used by
But
students.
if we had a visitor coming on campus, really, what are we gonna do? You know, we're gonna tell them, put out the cigarette, you're not allowed to smoke here, but they're not coming to meet with anybody, they're not taking an education program.
Yeah.
But it says according to the administrative handbook or something in there, which actually doesn't exist anymore for visitors and staff.
And this one,
Yeah. So that was kind of to show that we have 2 policies, one of them, cause I even asked, Rob,
Mhm.
where's the administrative policies, and
Yeah.
he's like, I've never heard of those.
Yeah.
So, there's 2 separate policies, now you guys have to decide, do we bring them together in one? But what do we do for a visitor, other than,
Yeah, and I just
Ask them to
point that
put
out,
the
cause this
cigarette
is
out.
student safety, use by
Right.
students,
Why
and
do
then
we
here we
address
have a
the
visitor,
right,
so maybe
component.
this is, well then, I get the visitor, but it's funny, cause you probably would not
We
have
have
like
a
a first,
visitor
second, or
guideline
third
for,
offense
like,
of the.
I agree, yeah, I mean,
I
those could
agree.
absolutely, yeah,
I
yeah,
have a
I
visitor
agree.
one.
Well, there is a law referenced in this one, so, in the tobacco, for the school property one, the Smoking Restrictions in School Act, I mean, that's some sort of law, so I don't know if
But then
there's
it's
law.
funny, this says students found
about
using
it.
or in possession of any tobacco product. So maybe it is trying to figure out either combining them or even updating this to not talk about but okay, I'm gonna ask Chris, it's not like you're gonna hand this to someone when they walk in the building.
I
Right.
think it,
But I do think once the policy is done, we should have all the kids in middle school and high schools read it and sign it.
Okay,
I don't know, cause I just feel like,
Well, I
there's
think
all these
that-
policies that no one,
The handbook should reflect the policies and
yeah,
they sign
usually we
off
use
on the
that,
handbook.
handbook,
Right.
they
But-
do sign the handbook?
I mean, you sign off on it in Aspen that you reviewed the handbook.
The parents do, not the kids.
Alright, so what are we thinking for next steps?
well, can we try to get the Healthy School Coalition and the prevention, or do we think we don't need that?
Yeah, did we reach out to them to invite them, or how does that?
they were on our listserv, and they both unfortunately couldn't be here
Okay.
today.
Yeah. Do we want to, for next time, do we want to, maybe just give this tobacco policy a look and see if we can just like maybe bring questions or
Or
suggestions?
maybe like highlight too, like
Yeah.
how you wanna change, kinda like we did with the wellness. I feel like
Yeah, I
Trish,
was
you,
just gonna
you
say,
kinda had us come
you
back
had
and
us-
like,
Yeah, we kind of deconstructed it and then we broke up into groups
and each took like a
and
second.
kind of divided and conquer and then
Okay.
kind of reported back and it kind of drilled it down quickly that way.
Okay,
Yeah, I feel like that was,
Yeah, really, a year and what?
He got it done.
Okay, so do we wanna kinda use that as a model
Yeah,
for
that worked.
next?
For
Okay.
next.
So next time we'll bring the tobacco products policy. We will,
And the chemical health in this one too, right?
and the chemical health. We'll break out and,
The sections, just,
yep,
and be able to work like 2 or 3. I'll break it out and then we can just decide, 2 or 3 people, and we just take 10 minutes or so in the meeting
Mhm.
and just get an overview there. Or I could be, I mean, depending on, we need to know who's gonna be at the meeting before, we can really decide who's doing what.
right.
When's the next meeting?
December or something.
And see, I think like,
December 4th.
Like, what do we have, 6, like, certain sections? What were you gonna say, Rob?
I was just gonna say, like, I think based on like, just the task we're presented with, we probably should start with the tobacco policy on its own, I think. Because ultimately, that's really what, when we boil it down, that's really what the task is the
Which
tobacco
one is
policy.
it?
The tobacco product on use on school
On
property,
school property.
JICG.
Okay, that has nothing to do with discipline, however,
Well,
so,
But that's why we're looking at it, you know what I mean? It is something we could look at as a, you know, like a way to make adjustments if we feel we need to. But I would start there before we go to the chemical health one, because really, that's really the policy we're looking at. And so that's where I would start, just to kind of simplify things and make it a little more,
when you say, I don't quite understand that, because like, the chemical health one and the model policy is all about violations, right?
Mhm.
And isn't our task to incorporate that into one of these policies? And the chemical health policy is the one that actually has the consequences of use of cigarettes, cigar, and smokeless tobacco, and any nicotine.
Mhm.
So,
It should be.
I don't quite, like.
I'm not saying we won't look
I
at
don't
this.
know.
I'm just saying for the sake of our order, I just think it might be worthwhile, just so we're not mixing them up, because they are 2 separate policies now. So I was thinking like, just to start is looking at one, and then moving from there to look at the other. But, I mean, again, I'm open to how you
I
wanna
think
look
we
at
do
it.
both in one.
I mean, I
meeting.
just think we got all the information, so it's like fresh in our heads, like we just had this great presentation.
I wonder if we
And
can,
had
Okay.
all this data, and that really relates to that, me personally, that's
No, I agree,
just
and I
what
also
I think.
feel like the whole 10-day suspension, like, I don't know how keeping out of school for 10
I
days
wonder-
is healthy, like, at all good for them academically.
I wonder, Pam, if we can apply the model policy to the back of this tobacco product use on school property, where it says first offense, second offense, third offense? Like,
But I
we can
think
make
this is-
additions there, is that
You
what
could,
you were
but-
looking to do?
But the chemical health policy currently has the violations in it. I mean, if you go to page 5.
Because I almost feel like this policy
I don't
for the
really-
students
I
should
see what you're
refer to
saying.
this
I
policy.
mean, I hear you, but that would
It
be
would be the
combining
same.
the 2 policies then.
Yeah,
Yeah, like, I almost feel like this policy, the only thing that's wrong with it is probably under students, saying refer to the chemical health and student safety, like, refer to this policy. Cause it doesn't really give, like, the discipline stuff is for staff, not for students. It's just saying staff. So really, the only thing it says about students is students found using or in possession of any tobacco product shall be subject to the sanctions and procedures as contained in the administrative regulations, which you just said we don't have, pertaining to the use and possession. So it's almost like you have to change the administrative regulations to this policy.
Yeah,
Right? Like,
absolutely,
cause I don't really think there's anything else in this policy that seems,
correct. I mean, that's the way I read it.
right, I mean, unless the staff we're having an issue with the staff vaping.
The other thing I
On
would do
the site,
too
I don't know.
is look at, there have been several schools who have rewritten their policies, incorporating the model into it. Maybe do, a search and look at how they worded their policies and put everything into place.
So do you know those schools? Because I did do a little research.
I'm sorry, I was just gonna suggest, I will reach out to Karen Witherell
Yeah.
from the Healthy Coalition.
Oh, all right,
She's
see.
gonna have those resources
Yeah.
that they've already searched it out.
Yeah.
We can have her, forward us some model templates.
Other districts, yeah.
So why don't we just say we'll look at both, we could start with this and then see what that says. So if there's anything in this one that people don't like,
It strikes me that like if the shorter policy includes visitors, that, I mean, we might look at pulling out the student component of that. but
Altogether?
keeping- But
Yeah.
keeping that for visitors and staff, because like visitors are allowed to smoke and, and drink and do stuff at their homes, they're adults, but our other policy like includes like the chemical use talks about at parties and things like that, like the chemical use doesn't apply, the whole policy doesn't apply to visitors.
Yeah, that's-
So maybe pulling, instead of like totally combining them, pulling the student component out of that. So because because if you fold in visitors and staff into this, then you have the duplicate, we do have a policy on drug-free workplace and drug-free schools that's relative to staff. So I wonder if, instead of trying to put everything in this, we look at more clearly defining that and this.
yeah, cause it's
Does
funny, I
that
think the
make
only thing
sense?
in here is just, there probably shouldn't be mentioned students in this, because you're right, it's really,
Well,
everything else is
So I think that,
relevant
like,
to visitors and,
but you, like, if you go on the website and you wanna find this policy, you're gonna see tobacco product use on school property, and you're gonna think, oh, that's what I gotta look at, cause my student is there. And then you're gonna open that policy and you're gonna be like, ah, there's nothing about students, so then you're either gonna deep dive and look for the second policy, or you're gonna have something that tells you to refer to the second policy. Or you could rename this policy to
thinking we
make it
rename
clear
this.
that it's not students.
I think
Yeah,
how
like,
I'm
you-
reading this is one is property and one is behavior. And those are, this is the expectation of what happens on North Kingstown School Department, school property. And the other one pertains to behavior of students, you know what I mean? That's how I'm reading it. but-
oh, I know what you're saying, yeah.
Yeah,
But I
I
get what you're
mean-
saying, you wouldn't Google it that way, you would
Yeah.
Google like, I know
Yeah.
what Pam's saying, how you probably.
But it's like no trespassing or what, I mean, it's property.
So maybe
whereas
it is
this
just
other
trying to
one
figure
is
out a way to
behavior.
title it
When I
when you
look
Google.
back,
Yeah, exactly.
I'm looking back at the agenda from June, which carried over to this year. And the topic was NKSD tobacco policy, Rhode Island tobacco-free school model policy, and NKSD tobacco policy. I agree with Rob. That was on there in June as a freestanding, let's just do that first. If we are going to morph it into something else after the fact, I think we should just do that. And the meetings go by quickly, and if we can tackle that document, then we can
Yeah,
attach, piggyback, customize, do whatever we have to do going forward. What's that?
But it already is attached.
All I know is where we were last year, and I
Well,
just
I think we confused them,
think,
because I think
let's just
this
work with that document.
is more like this policy. I think the
Yeah.
model policy, the Rhode Island tobacco free, seems like it's closer to our chemical health institute, do you know what I mean, like,
Yeah, it is.
yeah, which,
But I think that, again,
but I know what you're saying.
yeah, I think that the first thing we wanna do is determine what we're doing with the tobacco policy, because that was
Okay.
kind of what we were set up to
That's
do.
what, yeah, we rolled over from last year.
Right. So I think we have to figure out what we wanna do with that, whether we want to merge that into another policy, whether we want to continue with that as a separate policy, and if so, what we wanna adjust to that policy. And then if we decide that we wanna merge it with this other policy, then we can have that conversation and we can talk about how we do that and where it would fit into that document
It
and,
may end up being one document.
correct.
But we can just take
Correct.
that piece for starters.
That's all I'm thinking. I was just thinking about the order of
No, I know.
operations, just so we.
That's why I look back to see, the past agendas.
Yep. So we can start there.
Yep.
Okay, and that can move quick, right? That can move quick. But then we can say, all right, we're gonna make a call. We're gonna keep it or we're gonna
I
merge
will-
it. And if we vote to merge it, then we start to take language and merge it into the other one. That's my thought.
Okay.
Sound all right?
So we all end up with the same document to start.
Okay, so maybe for next time, we just want to, like, maybe review these policies, maybe read them over,
Yeah.
and kind of like, come in with a, an understanding of the language, and so we can get right to work on reviewing the first one, and then seeing what we want to do, and then going from there. Sound okay?
Sounds good.
All right.
next item is citizen comments, and we have no citizens here. And then before we adjourn, I just want to thank everybody for your participation in the committee. I did not get reelected, so I will not be on the school committee, and I will not be chairing this meeting anymore. So I wish everybody the best of luck, and certainly if there's anything that you ever need from me, Rob, everybody has my phone number, so just feel free to reach out.
Thank you, Debbie.
All right?
Thank you.
Yep, thank you.
Thank you.
And thank you all again. And, do we have a next meeting date? Did we say we?
December
December
4th.
4th.
December 4th, okay.
That was my only
Yeah.